hello, you stunningly gorgeous people of the interwebs. I'm sorry that I've kept you waiting so long. I quite literally can't believe it's been 2 months since I last uploaded my Berserk video. The big behemoth, the big kahuna, the end of the Eclipse. Now, that was notoriously the worst part of Berserk, or so I've been told. And a lot of people were shocked at my reaction, that it was a little bit of a dull, dim reaction. And I apologize for that, but I have read some pretty horrific things in this world. But here we are, continuing on to what I think might be my favorite arc, which is the Lost Children. I think to me, I don't know, that feels like it's an eerie, weird story that I can get down with, so I'm so excited. Right now, we are about to open the deluxe edition. I didn't do my normal little intro, which is showing you. It's here. I'm excited to read it. I hope that you're going to enjoy reading it along with me. We're going to do the traditional layout, which is going to be me talking about it, and then we are going to have the reaction cam. You know, when a little sad, interesting, and bubbling moment comes up, I gotta get my reaction. Let's see what this unfolds. Now, I'm not going to read the little intro here because apparently that was a massive spoiler. And yes, it was. A lot of people were a little upset that they did that. I kind of can't believe that they did. Didn't really leave room for mystery when horrible things were happening to Casca. So today we're going to just bypass that completely and we're going to just open it. And of course, check out the first page. So let's do a little ASMR. Yeah. A little bit of moment of joy before we get into the
dark stuff.
Not looking at that, not looking at it, but we'll use it as a bookmark. I do love to do that. Okay, here we go. It's here. Let's check out the first page. Berserk Deluxe Edition 6. That is what we're on. Oh, first page. Hello. I gotta work out more. Here we go. Yeah, baby. Yeah. That looks a little freaky deaky. A little freaky deaky. Okay, so let's talk about the contents of the first part of the book. We have Conviction Arc, Lost Children Chapter, Monster, Sky Demon, A Bloody Night Sky. These all sound so promising and lighthearted. The Space Between Demon and Man, Firefly, The Way Home, Blue Sky Elf, Conviction Arc, Binding Chain Chapter, The Beast of Darkness, The Holy Iron Chain Knights, Part 1, The Holy Iron Chain Knights, Part 2, The Hollow Idol. Okay, let's see our first page. Oh, and here we go. Nothing bad. Nothing too bad. Feels like it's going to be a great start. And we're going to get deeply, deeply, deeply into this book. Using this as a bookmark. Maybe, if it doesn't fly away from me. Stay tuned. Let's rock it. Let's see how horrified and sad I've become, because I feel like this is going to make me even more upset than maybe the Eclipse. Is that controversial to say? I don't know. I feel. Let's right our wrongs right here. Look at this. Show the book where I'm at. Hello, 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 hello. Yes, it is a new day. It is a new bit of turmoil and sadness happening to Guts. I read all of the chapters that I had talked about when I was first introducing the book, and right now we have just entered into the belly of the Conviction arc. So I finished the Lost Children arc, which honestly was a little bit devastating to finish because, as I predicted before, this was an arc that I really, really, really enjoyed. I think for me, just getting invested in that storyline was super impressionable and super, I don't know, it kind of was like humanizing for Guts. I feel like so much of his story is all about battle, and so much of it is just about trying to survive and trying to seek revenge on Griffith. That guy. Between the characters of Rosine and Jill, I think you were extrapolating much past past Guts and the Band of the Hawk, which is a great central part of the story, obviously, but I think just Miura being able to embody and to create these two external characters and make you feel something for them, though Rosine is objectively a bad person, I think you start to feel something, extending maybe an olive branch to people who are facing different circumstances. That's kind of like my general idea of the Lost Children arc, where it ended and what I got out of it. And now we're just going to kind of go through some of the chapters and really explore a lot of the themes, or at least what I'm seeing as a central theme, maybe particular to the Lost Children arc. I'll be very interested to see what the Conviction arc has, but what I saw a lot in the Lost Children arc, and let's talk about that theme that I think Miura is presenting. So with this, and I think I talked about this in the last video that I was talking about, you're really starting to see how Guts is portrayed by the outside world. You start to see this whole book opens up with him being hunted by this group of people that will eventually start to understand who they are towards the end. But you're starting to really see how he's perceived. Us as readers, we start to love him. Obviously, he's our protagonist. But for the outside world, you're starting to see a lot of this destruction that he has allegedly done. In the last video that I talked about, it kind of ended with him. He was under suspicion of making all those children disappear. I'm going to censor it because I know that YouTube is so crazy about what it censors. So I think in the introduction of this, you're starting to see how the outside world is viewing him, how humans are viewing him, how people in general are starting to hunt him because they think that he is a bad person. This black swordsman has this very ominous flavor and this thing about him that needs to be destroyed. So it's just laying the foundation for these new antagonists and these new people that are starting to challenge him. And then we get into Sky Demon, and this is really another battle scene. Guts really showing how he's able to sift out his enemies and combat them. This is again drawing back to where we left off in the last one with Rosine. Jill is trying to find a common ground between understanding Guts, but also feeling this intense kinship to Rosine because that was her childhood friend. That was the person who wants a better life. And this is where I think you start to see, at least what I'm seeing, is the theme of the most innocent people are affected in this world. Guts, you can align that with Guts. Guts was innocent in his whole life. And I think also Jill is a great testament to somebody who, you know, spoiler alert, ends up getting out relatively unscathed, at least in this chapter. But Rosine, I think, was an example of someone who saw an ability to have power intervene into the circumstances of her life and try to make something better for herself. What I do love is that Miura loves an evolution of a bad guy. I will say that is also something else I've realized in his drawing and his writing. You think that the bad guy is defeated, but then there's like a turbo evolution. And with Rosine, I thought it was probably one of my favorite ones, probably because I'm a woman and I like to see like a very feminine evolution, because I think a lot of them are like very brute masculine evolutions, which is great, but I love to see this evolution just because I think this whole like bug elf character is really, really cool. And this whole battle to me was probably one of my favorite battles that I've seen. I think it was really long lasting, but I think having Jill as a counterpart to this and having Jill kind of be like this dutiful disciplinarian in the background was a really interesting take. Also, Miura, funny guy. Funny guy. My guy was being funny in this a little bit. Was like, let's take a little breather. Let's let the audience breathe a little bit and let's get funny with it. Throws out a little heart. Come on now. We love to see that. This is very funny to me. This is very, very funny. It's a date in the starry sky. Little heart. And then we got hold me close now, honey pie. Whee! I think that's very funny. I think Miura is a little jokester because they're really just rolling around trying to get each other. I think that's very funny. Same. I love somebody who could step back and say, I'm here to make sure that this car crash isn't that painful. Not that painful. And then we get into the space between demon and man, which I really love this title. I think that this is, again, playing with the idea of Guts realizing that he's no longer just a man and there's something else that's totally arrested his being. And he's trying to kind of convey this to Jill, who is very much a human. Like, I'm not just a man anymore. And I love this title. More battle, and Puck is the voice of reason. We love it. Puck continually being the voice of reason. Stop it now. And I'm kind of generalizing these chapters a lot because I think for me, it's like a lot easier to flow this way. But I think an interesting conversation to be had, and I think even going into the deeper into the conviction arcs, is this idea of good versus evil. Outwardly, Rosine is a bad character. I briefly talked about this, like objectively bad, right? Has the Behelit, is a bad person trying to kill Guts. But I think like a broader conversation to be had, and a lot of what stuck out with me with the demon and man is Guts good? Like, he is good, right? Because we're rooting for him. We know the history of his life. We know his inception of why he became this massive killer. But is he good? You know, if we were to step back and be the people who are eventually going to be hunting him, which we'll get into in the next chapters, would we think of him as a good person, right? Would we think that Rosine is necessarily a bad person for trying to step up and help herself and help her family and help her friend? Where do we draw the line of who is explicitly good and who is explicitly bad? I'm not designating those roles particularly, but I do think it's a really interesting conversation. And I think that that is a really smart mechanism that Miura uses to talk about Guts. You understand his faults and you understand his inner turmoil on a whole different level, and it really can make you question, like, is what he's doing right? Why is he making these decisions? And as a protagonist, I think it's smart to have that, especially as the evolution of the comics progresses, to just have that as a reader wonder, like, how stable is this person and why am I continually rooting for him? And then we get into the flashbacks with Firefly of Rosine's life, the circumstances, and again, this is bringing me back to the conversation that I just had, like, who is bad? Who do we side is bad? Whose history is justifiable as like a bad route? I always am a sucker for a flashback as well. I think that that really forms the character. I just like that Miura pays a little homage to people and their inception. I think he gives them the benefit of the doubt more often than not. And that's what makes these characters weirdly lovable. Like, I really liked the character of Rosine. Even though she was bad, I thought that that was a great story to tell. And then we get into the way home, which Rosine is like, wounded and dying, and Jill is trying to make sense of everything that's happening. And there's this great line, and I think, again, tying back into the theme of what I'm trying to say, is Jill says, why do you hate her so much? Why do you hate her so much? I don't know. I loved that. That stuck out to me in a way that I think his writing in this, The Lost Children, was really the strongest. In The Way Home is also where the iron, hold on, I have it written down. Holy Iron Chain Knights. Let that sink in. The Holy Iron Chain Knights. This is where they tie back in. They were the first pictures that were drawn, and this is where they tie back in. You have Zebek, this like little dweeby Zebek, who is actually the father of Jill. He shoots Guts. They've sent out this whole legion of people to try to capture Guts. The Holy Iron Chain Knights. I'll never get it right. I'm sorry, I'll never get it right. But this is where they re-enter back in, and this is where Guts is up against this other trial and tribulation. This goes into Blue Sky Elf as well, where Rosine's story is kind of splintering off and dying, and Guts is now being introduced to the Holy Ironclad Knights. And there's this really beautiful picture and this beautiful writing, and it says, I'm going to read it out loud. I have it. Rosine's flown off for home, almost like Pecaf running back to his house, a road she will never reach the end of. I love that. A road she will never reach the end of. It's just constant turmoil and struggle for these characters. And I think that with the introduction of these knights coming in, it's really illuminating the difference and just how splintered Guts has become from being a human to actually facing these humans. Usually he's up against these weird, mutated, kind of evolved beasts, but now he's up against humans, and you really start to see the splintering of how people perceive him, like actual human beings perceive him. At the Beast of Darkness, we see the Skull Knight again. We see the Skull Knight Daddy. Skull Knight Daddy, and he sees the Behelit. There's also this great scene that's happening kind of parallel where Guts is trudging through the forest. He's wounded, and there's all these demons that are following him and just harassing him with these words and making him feel claustrophobic in the way that he already feels about himself. He already feels horrible about himself, but these things are just, you can feel it. If it was to be like visually shot, I feel like it would just be getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and it's just his mind and these things coming at him. He's with our guy Puck, and Puck is just hilarious. I literally know that Miura said, hey, We got to break up this emotional tedium. Let's throw Puck in there. I've had a long, hard day. I don't want to draw sadness anymore. Let's throw Puck in there. And that's what he does. And that's what I love. And it's great. We're getting into the Binding Chain chapter and the Chain Knights part 1 and 2. We're going to put this together because I want to. This is a really, really interesting chapter and an interesting take from Miura, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it if you have read it, because to me this is putting in religion. So who are they called? Holy Iron Chain Knights. Holy is quite literally in their name, right? And I think that Miura already plays with a lot of light and dark in his visuals. When there's a malevolent creature, there's a lot of darkness, right? When he's just talking about like an average person or a child or Puck, there's a lot of lightness in the drawing. And I think that this is the first time that it's really explicitly a character being driven by religion. Lady Farnese is basically saying, like, this is the will of God to get you. This is the will of God. And I don't think Miura is really playing with religion too much, but I think it's, again, playing into lightness and darkness. Who's good? Who's evil? Who has the right to call themselves good in this situation, in this world? And then Guts fully captured. She delivers the iconic line that I saw in my comments so many times when I first started this about the iron sword. And she says, slab of iron for which the term sword would be inappropriate. And she's reproaching him and she's hitting him with all this stuff. She's really taking out her anger, her frustration on him. Now he's been captured. My guy is ripped as hell, okay? Whoa, ripped as hell. And he starts to feel his little mark throb. And there's a bad guy approaching him. So that's where we're at. I am a little bit sad that Lost Children is kind of done. And I really enjoyed that one. I thought that was like one of my favorite things that I've read. I do hope that this next bit is great. I'll show you what we're getting into. We're going to be getting into Conviction Arc, Binding Chain chapter, The Unseen, Night of Miracles, Past and Future, Morning of Truth, Conviction Arc, Birth Ceremony chapter, Revelations Part 1, Revelations Part 2, Revelations Part 3, Cracks in the Blade, A Feeble Flame, Two Holy Ground Part 1 and Two Holy Ground Part 2. So I'll be interested to see what happens. I'll check back in after I finish those, and baby, you know, we're going to keep going. Hopefully some more reaction cams. I didn't have makeup on earlier, so I didn't want to be put on there, okay? Wee, 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 wee. Yeah. I've got my headband on, so you know that I'm trying to secure any sort of sanity that might be in my little noggin, okay? Because we're halfway through. You see where it is. You see what's happening here. I am going to, I'm going to actually keep the book here. I'm going to put up all the chapters that we're going to be talking about in this particular section because I like the free-flowing form of just being able to give a little monologue about my thoughts with the chapters coming up. Wow. I think that this section, maybe I just was super into it in this particular time. I don't know. I got so into these chapters. This felt like such a deep, impactful part of Guts. I felt like there was super vulnerable parts of this. I felt like the characters outside of Guts were super helpful in aiding the story. A lot of these plot lines were super, super heavy, but also weighted in a direction that's going to just keep the story moving forward. I really, really, really enjoyed this. This could be maybe even better than Lost Children. I know that everybody says that this is where it kicks off, and I think that that does make perfect sense. There's a lot of reactions coming up in this section because Mama was feeling it, okay? Mama was feeling it. So where did we leave off? Guts has been captured, right? And I think that there's this really interesting introspective part of this section where Guts is without his sword, right? He quite literally has his like machine gun arm removed as well, and he's in this cage, and it's just... there's this really small moment where he's recognizing how powerless he is without his sword. And I think that that's a moment of recognition throughout the entire series. It also is brought up again when he's visiting Godo, Master Godo, which we'll get to in a little bit. He's saved by Puck because Puck is perfect. Perfect. Who's dressing up as Puck for Halloween, you know? Who is? Could be me. Anyway, I think that this is just like this very small moment, this little caveat of something special happening, and you just realize that he is still just a person, like a sub-person, but without his sword. I think this sword just gives him this value, and I've talked about it in a last video, but it feels like a shield for him. Even though it is quite literally a sword, it feels like a shield. People hide behind everything. There's a lot of veneers that we have, and I think that that was just a little special moment that I picked up on. Anyway, this is the moment that he breaks free because of Puck's help, and of course, he stumbles on Lady Farnese, and this is a wild section. Heyo, what's going on here? I know what's coming up. I know what's coming up. Very interesting also, this look at, I think she feels a lot of guilt about what she's done to Guts because of her religion and the idea that, is she doing what she's supposed to be doing? I imagine she's kind of beating herself up the way that she beat up Guts in the previous chapter. I also think I just found my new favorite beasts. I am a dog lover. Dog lover by nature. You know, look at that. That is so good. Yeah. Oh, that's so freaky. Now y'all listen, okay? I see you all in the comments talking about horses. Don't think that doesn't go past me, okay? I didn't think it was going to happen in here. I had an idea. I had an inkling of what that horse reference was going to be. I didn't know it was going to happen probably right now. Oh, no. Oh! And what a solid lead up to it. So right now, Lady Farnese is trying to run away from this battlefield. These dogs that have come in, these epically drawn dogs. And now this demented horse is probably one of the coolest things I've seen. Maybe not cool, maybe that's not the right rendering for this, but oh, what an eerie look, and I'm seeing what's coming up. Oh! Oh no! That's crazy. Miura, you're crazy for that one. Oh, wow. And Guts is having a flashback, this very, very distinct flashback in the Eclipse, which is a great parallel to show. I mean, the visuals of this are horrifying to look at. Very, very horrifying. Especially the horse, I would say. That's pretty graphic. But Guts is having a flashback to what happened to Casca with Griffith, like, horribly taking advantage of her. So that happened. In this particular sense, it's just such a demonic and possessed feeling coming over that horse, just the look of it. It was really startling, and people have made references to this in the comments, but when you stumble upon it, you really don't know what's coming over you until it's there. I thought that this was really well executed. And I think, again, this is tying a lot into religion and this piousness that we feel can kind of control us in a way, not necessarily in a bad direction. But I think a lot of this is this inner turmoil that you're starting to see with Lady Farnese and what she's capable of, and just how much she is not able to control the situation, though she thinks that she has this divine guidance. Now, if you've read into this book, we are currently on Morning of Truth chapter. Lady Farnese has been possessed, right? She's been absolutely possessed, and there's this lustful desire that's taken over her. And I'm telling you, there's something I can't show you, but there is something, if you've read this, you know what it is, I'm assuming. For me, looking at this is crazy. She's doing something with Guts' sword that looks very painful, I'll tell you that much, but what a visual. Great chapter. So eerie, so weird. Loved everything about this and thought that it was a great way to further carry the Lady Farnese character, and just made me super interested in her. Super interested in her, much more than I thought I would. And I think that she also introduces this idea, like this tango of power, you know? And I think that can be spoken for a lot of these antagonists, this tango of power. Who controls you? What controls you? Revenge is what controls Guts. And we'll see this later on in an epic portion that I'm going to read out loud from Master Godo. So anyway, cut to... we are now reintroduced back into Midland. Midland has suffered this insane plague that has left thousands and thousands and thousands of people dead. Along those who are suffering from this ailment is the king, and we are reintroduced to Princess Charlotte. Princess Charlotte is still weeping. She's still lamenting over what happened to Griffith, and she's been kind of inconsolable, basically bound up into her room for the past 2 years. This feels like something that is very normal in her life, just being bound and stowed away. Her father is beckoning her to come down, and there is this dream that has infiltrated the entirety of Midland, and it is of this white hawk. The dream of this white hawk. And of course, wouldn't you know, who is that white hawk? Who is he? We almost forgot about him, didn't we? We almost thought, oh, surely this story can go without him. But no. He is unfortunately the main lifeline, or not lifeline. Definitely not a lifeline, but unfortunately the main line coursing through everybody's existence, it feels like. And that is Griffith. There he is. There he is. It's taken halfway through this book for this guy to show up, but he's here. And what a splendid way he's coming in. There he is, just coming in to mess everything up again. So I'm assuming that he's going to take over Midland. Right? That's what's going to happen, I think. Obviously, in my reaction, Cam was talking about how I think he's going to take over Midland. I feel like that is it. That was his main dream, right? To rule, and it feels like he's infiltrating in a way. And it's interesting how I talked about, in the beginning of this video, the difference between lightness and darkness. And it's so kind of eerie to me, I guess, because I didn't really realize a lot of Griffith's initial introduction was this very white light. Obviously, his new look, what I call Tron Griffith, is incredibly dark, a complete juxtaposition between how he was originally introduced. So this white hawk feels like it's a complete disguise for people to fall surrendering down to him. And of course, with the dream, you have this crazy reconnection back to Wild, that guy. That guy, also not forgotten. And he has this weird premonition. Griffith, as the white hawk, comes and visits him and reminds him of his dream, which is complete annihilation and destruction. So you have these little droppings of reminders that these characters are still alive, and just this little rumbling that they're going to cause absolute chaos. And don't forget that they're there. Now, probably one of my favorite chapters in this entire book so far is when Guts goes back to visit Rickett and Master Godo. Also, I want to highlight these small increments of detail that Miura was able to capture to just show a little bit of age progression. Obviously, Casca is introduced to this as well. She kind of comes in a dream to Guts. He's falling asleep, and she's begging a warning of him. That's her first introduction in this particular storyline. We haven't seen her in a while. Well, it has been 2 years since he has last seen her. So there are slight age progressions that Miura shows. Rickett's a little bit older. Master Godo is unfortunately falling incredibly ill, but this is an amazing, amazing grounding chapter for Guts. And I think, again, like I talked about in the beginning of this humanizes him in a way. This brings back this very human element to him and shows that he has these people who care so deeply about him. Rickett is making him new weapons. Master Godo, even though he's basically on his deathbed, he resharpens his sword, and he has these amazing moments of clarity, of this just showing Guts that the world doesn't have to be violence. You are chasing it yourself. That is essentially Guts' dream, is revenge. That's what's pulling him. That's what's forcing him. That's what's leading him. And I think it's so great to just have this. I just want to read out loud. Vengeance is like soaking a blood-rusted sword in even more blood and sharpening it. You sink the blade called your heart deep into blood in order to fix the nicks called sorrow. The more you sharpen, the more it rusts, so you sharpen it again. In the end, all that's left is a pile of rust and scraps. Just some great old man wisdom. Some great old man on the deathbed wisdom. We can all take from that. Also, I'm sorry. Nobody wants to talk about the fact Guts is a man. There's a moment where he says, I'll never lose her again. Bring that back. This is turning into like a romance for me, even though it's not. That's a joke. That is a joke. That is so attractive. Hell Hell yeah, no, he will not lose her again. And I think that there's also a really nice part of this chapter to show the juxtaposition between how Rickert processed the loss of the Band of the Hawk, building this amazing cemetery for them, and Guts just strove and ran away to try to mask what happened. And I think, again, it shows that light and that dark and how we wrestle with it and with the decisions that we make. And I thought that that was really beautiful. I just loved that particular chapter so much. And I like to see these characters that are like somewhat normal in this absolute mayhem world. And then, of course, the namesake thing, we are told about the Tower of Conviction. And this is where we get a month previous flashback to Lady Farnese and how she has dismissed the Black Swordsman mission. And now it is introduced this Mazgus guy who is rancid, absolutely rancid. He's coming in, destroying stuff, and I know that he is our next big bad guy. Really interesting narration going into this. I'm going to try to make a prediction. What prediction are we going to make? I don't know if I have any predictions in me. Anyway, to close out this, we have Conviction Arc, Birth Ceremony Chapter, Kushan Scouts Part 1. Kushan Scouts? That's not right. Kushan Scouts Part 2, Tower of Shadow Part 1, Tower of Shadow Part 2, Children of Shadow, Fierce Believer, Bowels of the Holy Ground, The Witch, Spirit Road Part 1, Spirit Road Part 2, Pillar of Flame. And that'll do it. That'll do it. Do it to it. I'll get back to you by the end, let you know what happened. Welcome back, you filthy animals. I can call you filthy animals because you know what? Nobody was telling me that this was going to be the most disturbing part of this series. Nobody was talking about that. Everybody said, oh, the eclipse, your mind is going to explode, your body's going to crumple, you're going to feel things you've never felt before, you're going to see things that have never even been part of the imagery of your world. Well, listen here. Nobody was talking about this. This is a wild group of chapters. This was crazy. This was so crazy. I also need you to know, before we get into this, I just want to preface this whole experience with, I was reading this on a public transit system. I was on a train. 10:30 a.m. train. People were going to work. I don't know. I assume they were. And you know what? I was working too, baby. Again, I thought that the last couple of chapters that I read in the last section were some of my favorite. But this was insane storytelling on Miora's part. I think just a lot of the characters that were briefly introduced and the trajectory of them, like how rapidly it shifted from a somewhat linear, normal story to just wild left field, was totally great. Imagery, insane. People's actions, absolutely bonkers. Crazy town. Come, my lady. Come, my lady. I shouldn't be singing that in this context. It opens with the Kushan army, and Guts is already just destroying things. He's trying out his new sword. Hey-oh, look at that. And these are all part of the Bakiara, a name that I have completely forgotten. Also crazy, this was in the first deluxe volume that I read, that I remember reading about Bakiara. I believe it was. And I remember mispronouncing it, and I'm mispronouncing it again, so I apologize. But I haven't heard that name in a while, and I really appreciate Miora's ability to bring back these things that he planted a long time ago and really force the reader to navigate who they were, try to remember, recall what their significance was in the story. And this is where they're coming back in. And I also will say, in this particular volume, there was a lot more just blank pages of illustrations, which I liked. Just horrible things put out on page, but just no words and just letting the drawings speak for themselves, which I thought, again, super impressive by Miura, and just shows how capable he is to convey the story without really having to write anything. That was maybe like the tamest part of this experience, because this whole thing just starts with a bang. The Vale of Mazgus and his devoted torturers, you start to see just how warped their mind is, truly torturing people in some of of the most horrific visuals I think I've seen in this whole thing. So that's their whole narrative, and just really painting a picture of just how disturbing and disgusting Mazgus is. Anyway, we fast forward to Casca. So Casca, she is alive, kind of. She's all wrapped up in these bandages, and she has taken the name Elaine. Now, this part of the whole story is also insane. Also, just crazy, crazy town. I'm not going to sing those lyrics again because this definitely doesn't feel right to sing those lyrics. So Casca is now working under the name Elaine. She's completely wrapped up. They say that she has an STD. Let's just say that much because I don't want to be demonetized. But she's suffering from that. She's a sex worker right now. She's been taken under the wing of this awesome girl named Luca. Now, Luca is kind of like the mother hen of all of these women. She takes care of them. She distributes the wealth between them, and she makes sure that they're all taken care of. Now, I started reading this on the train, and I saw a girl that literally resembled me. I saw her, and I said, that looks just like me. I found my character. I literally wrote down in my notes, I found myself, and that is the character of Nina. Fast forward a little bit into Nina's story. That's not me. I just want the record to show that's not me. That is, that's not me, because Nina invites us into the bowels of the underworld. That is a whoa. She has this lover. His name is Joaquim, and she says, if you love me, stay with me. Now, she's also suffering from a horrific STD, and I think she's on her wit's end, and maybe she's hallucinating, and I don't know what it is exactly that drives her to go to this underworld, but she goes down to this underworld, and it's just this throbbing and sweaty and lustful place. And I wonder if Miora's whole theme throughout this is lust, and because my mind is going back to Lady Farnese and what happened to her when she became possessed. And I think it's the same thing that's happening to Nina, where she just becomes possessed by this lustfulness just taking over her. And I'm trying to understand what Miora's idea with that theme was, but it feels very apparent in Nina, almost like the sacrifice, right? Demonic sacrifice. I think it's playing into the idea that these heretics are being killed by Mazgus, and it's just showing this insane contrast with Nina and like demon worship down there. Crazy. Anyway, Luca stops, saves the day. She slaps her silly, kind of snaps her back in. But in that moment, Elaine Casca had followed Nina down into this portal, and it's you start to see she's stripped down and she's assaulted, and her mark is unveiled, and all of these, you start to see like really the depths and the destruction of this bowels of the underground, and you start to see that there are like the demons within there, and they're activated by the brand, and people start to think she's a witch. So I can only imagine that's probably where the conviction temple comes in, where she's put on the stake. There's also a lot of imagery of stakes, people being burnt at stakes. Salem, witches, heretics. Makes sense, right? This all makes sense. In the beginning of all of this, you were introduced to this character called Isidore? And he's feeling like he's going to be this little person that follows in Guts' footsteps. I think Guts is going to have this little protege. That's what his whole thing is going to be. He also gets a really funny nickname from Puck, Sneakadro, which I think is very funny because he's just sneaking. I think that's going to be a fun little storyline. Also, the imagery of him is very on par with Puck, which you know I love and I think is hilarious. So I'm so excited to see that. And so the main thing that probably happens is that the Skull Knight pops back up. The spirit guide, the Skull Knight, Puck, and the Skull Knight saving Guts' ass. Couldn't be any more different visually, but saving Guts' ass. And the Skull Knight tells that this festival is going to be so reminiscent of the Eclipse. Horrible things are going to happen. Casca is essentially in the same exact position as she was during the Eclipse, kind of suspended at the mercy of these people who are going to take horrific advantage of her. I imagine that's what's going to happen. But Guts is going to hopefully step in and save her again. At the very, 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 very tail end of this, you start to see a flashback of Lady Farnese, where she came from. And this feels eerily similar to the flashback that Griffith had when he was showing how he kind of stepped over these dead bodies to become and achieve his dream. This feels eerily reminiscent to that. That was the same imagery that was kind of being pulled out of my memory when I was reading this. It makes me question who Lady Farnese is, what she is, because the very, very last image is saying, like, you can feel that she wants to fight it. She wants to fight it so much. She's in this fetal position, and she just wants to eradicate this trajectory of her life. You can feel that. So anyway, this was crazy. I enjoyed it, though. I'm going to be honest. What does that say about me? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, I'm fully in. What's going to happen during the festival? I don't know. You guys tell me what your favorite part of this is, what I should be looking out for when I'm reading on to the next one. Reading the next horrific stuff that's going to happen. Dying to know. Truly. So that's it, guys. That's it. That's my commentary on that. I stick by the themes I talked about. And I stick by the fact that this was balls to the wall. Anyway, you guys are wonderful. You're fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you